Hey everybody. Today I just wanted to talk about Resident Evil video games and their canon. And what I mean by that is the events that happen in the games, how do they fit into the timeline, what really happened and what didn't happen. Um the series has a pretty loose uh relationship with canon in the sense that a lot of things displayed in the game aren't actually shown to be what happened or occurred in terms of events in later games. I'm going to kind of go through this page and use it kind of guide my discussion. And these are just kind of my opinions that I'm going to be talking about here. Nothing in here is like super coming down from the devs. It's just kind of how I see the games, and because I see a lot of discussion, and some like discussion is not. It's really heated discussion in a way that I feel like it's kind of missing the point of things and what canon really means to Resident Evil and how important it really is. So let's just let's look at it like this. So there's a lot of media listed on this list. I'm just gonna kind of like talk about it in terms of the video games. I'm not gonna talk about movies or uh, literature, comic books, or anything like that outside of just the video games, the main series specifically. But I'll talk about spin-offs where they're relevant. So the first Resident Evil game is actually really interesting in the terms of this because there is no canon version of Resident Evil, the original game. There's two scenarios: the Chris scenario and the Jill scenario. Um, and the way that they play out, they're completely independent of each other happening. Whoever you choose to play as, the character you don't choose to play as, rather, is completely removed from the game and is locked in a cell the entire game. So if you play as Chris, Jill's in a cell. If you play as Jill, Chris is in a cell. Um, and that also affects if Barry or Rebecca shows up. If you play as Jill, Barry shows up. If you play as Chris, Rebecca shows up. Now, as we can see throughout the series after the first game, both Barry and Rebecca survive, and both Chris and Jill experienced the events of the mansion, fighting Yawn or uh, Plant 42 and encountering Wesker the Tyrant. Like, both Jill and Chris experiences this in the canon events that we see in sequels. It's referenced that way. But there's no version of the game, the original or the remake, that represents that. So just right from the get go, and this is also a product because the first game wasn't designed as a series with a series in mind. It was like a standalone experience. So like either ending would have been fine and a complete experience on its own. So obviously when they spun this off into a whole series, obviously they had to go back and kind of rework some things. But you'll see like even in the future games, the devs themselves don't really mind too much about the little details. Mostly the major events that happen stay consistent. You know, Chris and Jill and Barry and Rebecca all go in that mansion. They fight the monsters. They fight the tyrant. Wesker gets killed. Like that all happens, no matter what scenario. The little details in between aren't what the developers care about, at least not in the big picture of things. Resident Evil 2 kind of uh, does this a little bit more gracefully, but it's not exactly clean in the sense that there's one timeline and version of events. So there's a Claire A, Leon B, meaning you played as Claire first and then Leon, or Leon A, Claire B, where you play as Leon first and Claire. Both of these scenarios are pretty different in terms of the events that happen in them. The major story beats are all the same. Birkin is defeated, Ada gets away, Mr. X is defeated. Um, the main things that change are just who is the one to, who kills Mr. X, who kills Birkin, who encounters what enemies first and in what order at all. You know, from a gameplay perspective, these things are different and they make sense. But when you look at the grand scheme of the story, it doesn't really matter. It's just broad strokes. These events are all the same, and I feel like that's where a lot of people get lost when discussing this, is going into the details. Like, did Leon fight Mr. X throughout the RPD, or was it Claire? And I think we just get so lost in these arguments that we really miss, like, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's not so important that each person encountered the events exactly the way the gameplay does it. In Resident Evil, this game series, I think the gameplay is supposed to, rather, I should say, the narrative serves the gameplay, because the gameplay is the main reason people are coming. This isn't a super heavily crafted narrative for people to come and play. That's not to say that the lore isn't important or enjoyable. I really like the lore in Resident Evil, but I think the devs are willing to take liberties with the canon that's been established just to serve cool gameplay for moments and fun, gameplay throughout the series. Like, it doesn't really make sense in the first Resident Evil game that only Chris or Jill can be played in one scenario and the other one's in prison the entire game. But it's more fun to have two different scenarios or two different things play out. So that's why they did it. Claire A, Leon B, Leon A, Claire B scenarios in Resident Evil 2 are the same way. Obviously, they all can't happen. Because the events just are mutually exclusive to each other. So obviously, there's not one true scenario represented in that game either, even if they try more. But the important thing is there's more scenarios to play, and that's more fun to do more things. That's really what it comes down to. What makes the game more fun? And that's why the games are developed the way that they are. So I feel like the devs don't care so much about the canon, so I don't think you should either. I should say you shouldn't be so hung up on the inconsistencies, because I don't think they're going to go away, and I don't think they need to. I think it's okay that they exist. Now, to be fair, the series as it goes on, Resident Evil 3, Code Veronica, most of these games don't have these split scenarios anymore. We do kind of see a re-imaging of this, though, in the remakes. So the Resident Evil 1 remake, which is right here somewhere. It should be right here, but the Resident Evil 1 remake doesn't fix the issue in the Resident Evil the original game has with the split scenarios that are mutually exclusive. Those still exist in the same fashion. Like, virtually nothing's changed in terms of structure. So, and they've had a chance to do this after so many games in the series that were released, and now they have an ongoing narrative throughout the games. They still chose to remain split narratives, and they didn't want to try and accommodate any sort of, like, one canon scenario. So that's, once again, the devs going back and reimagining their original game still left that the same way. So that really puts forth the point home that they don't mind that the canon doesn't match up that way. When we talk about remake Resident Evil 2, like I said, they change quite a bit about the game. They add new areas, and they change certain things, like the orphanage. That doesn't exist in the original Resident Evil 2. The Brian Irons involvement is different. Annette's a much different character. Ada's a different character. And they consolidate a lot of events in ways that can canonize certain events and, like, leave others out completely. A big one is the nature of Ada's death in Resident Evil 2 is different depending on if you're playing Leon A or Leon B. In Leon A, she falls off the bridge in the nest. In Leon B, she gets beaten up by Mr. X. Whereas in Resident Evil 2, there isn't an A and B scenario. There's only Leon's scenario when you play it first or second. And there's not much as much variation there. And they choose the falling off the bridge and Ness scenario as the only one. The event where she gets killed by Mr. X doesn't exist. So they chose a specific version to make canon in the remakes that wasn't in the original game. So that's a little bit more committal than, say, something in Resident Evil 2. But the developers have said that they consider all the games canon, the remakes and the originals as well. There's not really a true vision, and I feel like that's the best way to go about this. Essentially, is that there isn't a true one scenario in any Resident Evil game. It's all the gameplay does not necessarily match the events that happen, and that's just because it's more fun that way. I don't have a lot more to say on that. I just wanted to kind of throw my 2 cents in there because I see a lot of discussion on it, and I just wanted to put my thoughts out there. Canon, whatever. There is one, there isn't one. Just have fun. The games are fun. They're entertaining. We don't need to get too hung up on who killed Mr. X. Alright, that's all I got to say on this matter. Thanks for watching, guys.